Catus Maximus here. Happy Halloween. Got a quick review of a couple of Walden ratchets. We've got a 20-tooth sealed head ratchet, which uses a pivoting pawl or a Williams style design. And then we have a round head ratchet, which is pretty interesting. Walden Tools was a company that was around in 1906, 1907. They were founded. And they lasted up through around the 80s or 90s until they ended up finally going out of business. They were a pretty common brand of mechanics tools back decades and decades ago. But this slowly got pushed out of the market by, Proto and Snap-on and a lot of the tool companies we know of today. Walden tools were never quite Snap-on or Proto quality. They were all pretty good, but they weren't the best. And I think that's part of the issue that really kind of put them under. We can see on this Walden ratchet here, this is a 4060. A little bit of inconsistency with the knurling. The finish isn't super great. I believe these are original fasteners. Not quite the right length. We can see that the plate doesn't seat quite properly. Overall, it's not too bad. It is a forged anvil on there. It isn't machined. It's reasonably tight, but it isn't super great. They're overall not too bad for a vintage ratchet, but they're just not, once again, Snap-on or anything like that. What you may find from Walden too is one of their really old stamped sheet metal socket sets. They were really big on stamped sheet metal sockets and actually made multi-layer sheet metal wrenches, and they just weren't very good. Sheet metal is not, even though it's a good, you can have plenty of good material, it's just not thick enough, and they're not forged. So that's where people really knew them from. But I found both of these 3/8 ratchets, so I figured we'd talk about them. I think this old torpedo handle actually is nicer than the Pear head, at least from a manufacturing standpoint. As far as operational over the years, the Pear head still works just fine. This round head ratchet isn't super happy. When we reverse it, it doesn't really catch. So we'll take a look inside these. Anyway, this torpedo handle's not too bad. This is a 4051. It actually turned out a little better than the Pear head as far as the fit and the finish, but we can see it's still not quite even grinding up there. A bit of a sharp edge. Surprisingly enough, the anvil on this round head is just a little bit tighter than it is in the Pear head. Still a neat little ratchet and nice to add to a collection. A lot of people may run into Walden tools at estate sales and garage sales and thrift stores and not really know about them, and that's what they really were. It was essentially a mid-tier American tool brand that was just sold at auto parts stores and hardware stores and that type of stuff. And overall, they're certainly okay. Just nothing to get too excited about, and especially not to get overcharged for. We'll give a little bit of a lube. Let's go ahead and pop open this Pear head first, because it's going to be the easiest. At least I think it is. Let me work these screws out there. The threads are a little bunged up. Well, unfortunately, the screws weren't particularly high quality in this ratchet. I run into a lot tougher screws in other ratchets. I broke the screw, and that's just by hand. Let's see if I can't get this thing apart. Finally got this apart. I'm probably not going to try to get that broken off piece of screw out of there. That's going to be real exciting. I guess I could oversize it or something. Anyway, there it is. Real simple ratchet mechanism. Just a regular old coarse pawl here. Or, excuse me, anvil. And then we just have a single tooth rocking pawl that just uses this ball bearing. Since it's not really held in very securely, that's why they have the hole in the bottom plate to help support the back side of this pawl. But all the load is being placed just on that rather than in the body of the ratchet. That's actually a difference. This is not the same as the Williams design, because the Williams design is all machined out. So it helps support the pawl with the body of the ratchet instead of having the little hole through it. Anyway, that's the inside of the Pear head. Let's take a look at the round head. Quick note, I've never seen this before in a ratchet. They actually drilled out the back side of the anvil, and I have no idea why on earth you would do that. Now, this round head has an interesting design because the whole mechanism goes through the top of this reverse switch. I do like the design on this reverse switch. This nice ring. But then it comes through, and then there's the snap ring on top. That's what holds this whole thing together. Now, this does have more teeth. It's 26 teeth just because you have more space around the outside. So now that this is off, we'll go and pull the reversing switch. That's interesting. It's actually stamped, and you can see this is one of the reasons Walden's have never been you know, considered the top end, because like on this, it's actually pretty good condition. But you can see a stamped piece of sheet metal, if this is dropped repeatedly, will definitely ding and dent this up, and it'll have a bunch of friction down there. Interestingly enough, no, that was a snap ring that just simply held the reverse lever on, and there's actually a second one in there. I've never seen a ratchet with two snap rings. I wonder if this has twin pawls. We'll take a look here. Doesn't look too dirty inside. It's probably just really dry. So make sure not everything doesn't quite come apart here. It is a twin pawl design. We can see the inside of the head there. Not the broaching's okay, but surprisingly enough, if we can get just the right angle, you can see how big the flats are on the teeth there. If we flip it over, you can see they're much sharper, which means that when they drilled this, they did not put the broach down absolutely centered, and so it was a little bit offset, so it caused the teeth to get cut just a little bit shallower on one side than the other. That's another example, and this is kind of what I've known, or what some of the old timers have told me about the Walden tools, is that they're pretty nice, but once again, they just weren't the best, and they were trying to make them cost competitive. And that's one of the examples here, and that will cause inconsistency, because when you're ratcheting, it'll feel a little bit different when the pawls come across this area than when they're across the sharper teeth. A little disappointing to see that. This is an interesting design. It's a single pawl design, or it's a single tooth design, but twin pawl. So I guess it's two teeth, and how these pawls work is they just have a spring in between them. And when it's this little reversing lever here has two little pegs. Those two little pegs, you can just see there's a little notch in the top of these pawls. If I can get just the right angle here, you can just see that notch. So when you reverse it, what it does is it just causes these two pawls to go high centered over that spring, and then they switch over to this side, and that's what gives you the directionality, is it's going from this side to this side. Definitely needs some lube. I think that's kind of an oddball and interesting design that they have here. The pawls are actually supported in these machine channels. So I suspect this ratchet mechanism, for as rudimentary as it is, it's kind of neat, and it actually seems like it's going to be reasonably strong. Too bad for the Pear head. That Pear head I really didn't like very much at all. Let's go ahead and lube this up and put it back together, and we'll close this video out. And as I've discovered in many videos before, the round head ratchets are the ones that have a much wider variety of designs and engineering, just because of the space and the dimensions that you're working with in a round head. It's really kind of surprising that many Pear head ratchets, you know, there's about 5 or so different designs, but it seems with round head ratchets, just about every one has their own take on how the engineering, and so that's what's kind of neat. Even after giving this a real nice lube and seeing that it's pretty darn clean inside, still not super consistent. When I rotate it to tighten, works pretty darn good. But when I go to loosen, it's cooperating. Maybe it just needs to be worked in, but it just wasn't quite engaging very reliably. Engages that way pretty good. Well, now it's kind of coming together, but I can see why these may not be super popular, because if it just takes just a little bit of grit for it to not reverse, and I can see that could be the issue with those sliding pawls, is when you get a little bit of grit, those pawls will get stuck pretty easily. And it probably explains a lot of the design variances, is trying to make a ratchet that has strong pawls and a strong design, but also make sure that it's not susceptible to jamming and having issues operating once it gets gritty. And so that probably was another issue with the Walden tools, is a lot of people would get them and then find that they just didn't quite perform as well as they really would like them to, and hence they went by the way of history. Anyway, that was my little review of a Walden pear head and round head classic style ratchets. I do like the torpedo handle. That is pretty neat, and I do like the knurling on this. Super aggressive knurling. Really miss tools that have super aggressive knurling. Something that I hope manufacturers may bring back, because there's no better gripping surface than just a heavy knurl. Really, just unbelievable. But good knurling doesn't make up for a ratchet that just, doesn't really tickle your fancy. It just doesn't seem just the super quality that you would hope for. So you like this, and now it's kind of, the pawls didn't want to work, and now it's skipping. You can hear that, there it goes. So even cleaning up and using quality lube, this is probably something I'll just keep as a talking point rather than one that I actually use. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody who's been watching and subscribing, and if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.